recorded. First of all, thank you all for being with us. أهلا وسهلا فيك أستاذ شيخاني. Please stay muted throughout the session, and Meher, if you can help me admit people and manage it until I finish the introduction. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and I will call on you. You can use the reaction button. That's the best way because it puts you in the queue. We've had some people already sent me some questions. I'll call on them first. And please keep your questions short, sweet, and to the point because we are limited on time and we want to get as much information as possible. I want to thank our board. I want to thank our volunteers, our donors, because you really keep us true to our mission, which is we strive to preserve Lebanon as a model of freedom and democracy. We work to promote peace, neutrality, freedom of religion, and free speech. We support economic liberty and political independence to strengthen and expand the U.S.-Lebanon relationship in ways that enhances the security of both countries, to educate and guide decision makers on the bonds that unite the two countries and matters of interest to the Lebanese American community. And for those of you that live in the United States and you have not connected directly with us, please do so, because one of our main goals is to expand the Congressional U.S.-Lebanese Friendship Caucus. We now have 32 members of Congress part of that caucus, and our goal is to have 100 by December 2023. And to do so, we need all hands on deck. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Nicolas Shikhani. Nicolas Shikhani is a seasoned banker with deep knowledge in finance and economy. He worked in the banking sector in Paris, London, Singapore, Dubai, Beirut, and Geneva. Throughout his 30 years of international professional experience, he held executive level positions as CFO, COO, and lately as CEO for a blue chip regional bank in Switzerland. He also held board positions in international banks, global NGO, and fintech companies. Nicolas is not a member of any political party and holds a certificate as anti-corruption manager from the American Anti-Corruption Institute. Currently, he serves as Knight of the Order of Malta. He is also a member of the Swiss Forum of International Politics, of the Crypto Valley Association in Switzerland, and of SICTEC, Swiss Investor Club, and Life. Last, he was a former advisory board member of Offre Joie. Nicolas holds executive degrees in business, finance, from both the INSEAD and the Harvard Business Schools. He is an engineer in computer science with a specialization in cryptocurrency from the London School of Economics. أهلا وسهلا فيك. The floor is yours.
أهلا وسهلا بالجميع. Thank you Faris. Thank you our New Lebanon and the board. أنا عن جد بتشرف أكون معكم الليلة. سمعت كثير عنكم وما بعرفكم, بس the more I meet people from your organization, the more I am amazed by what you are doing. الليلة I'm going to speak in English because some people speak only English maybe in this room. But I will maybe put some words in Arabic or French from time to time in order to make the flavor real, in fact. I've been asked to talk about the economic situation in Lebanon and about a roadmap to solve the Lebanese economic problem and financial problem at the same time. Between the audience, there are great people with whom I also worked a lot on the situation. And I'm very glad that everybody is here today. And only together we can make it happen. Just for the history, for the story, I mean, I was most of my life living outside Lebanon, and in the banking sector, I traveled the world from a country to a country where banks are. And my last position was in Geneva as a CEO of a bank. And I decided to come back to Beirut because for family reason. When I arrived, I was watching the TV very quickly, and I heard the central bank governor talking. What he said surprised me. based on my experience in 25 years in banking, I said, this is not correct. That day was in February 2019. And start, on the back of a paper, doing some calculation. And I couldn't find numbers. Unfortunately, the central bank in Lebanon doesn't provide numbers. And quickly, I discovered that there is a big problem in the balance sheet of the central bank. Around August 2019, I discovered that there was an error of a mistake or a missing of $39 billion in the central bank balance sheet. And at first sight, I thought that was an error, that I made a mistake in my calculation. A friend of mine helped me. In fact, the problem was not of 39 billion, but 41 billion. So this was in August, September 2019. I tried to inform everybody about the situation because I just arrived to Lebanon and didn't know everyone and I didn't know anybody. So I went to the president, to the parliamentary, to the political party, to the embassies. Nobody was aware of the problem. And in January 2020, I decided to fight back the system and to create something called the economic revolution. And I started studying the system upside down with all the numbers. Already today we have everything. All the numbers are available. All the situation, all what happens is clear to me. And I can tell you, unfortunately, what happened to Lebanon is not a mistake. It's something programmed. Okay, unfortunately, the mistakes that were done are systemic. Something الأزمة ممنهجة بلبنان, which is a very serious thing. No one can do so much mistakes in some so short time, and no country in the world that used to hold, that its central bank used to hold $40 billion 3 years back could fall like this. So the errors and the mistakes were done. If our governors and politicians and Hukumi don't know what to do, what they are doing, this is a problem. And if they know what they are doing, this is a bigger problem. So the mistakes were systemic over the last 20 years. I stop here and I do a fast backward to 2021. Our problem started in 2021, in 2001, in fact, 2001, when the balance of payment in Lebanon turned negative for the first time. At that time, President Hariri went to France and brought Paris 1 or Paris 2. He injected some money in the system, and that helped the system to reignite. But unfortunately, for 10 to 15 years, nothing were done to sustain and to create a real economy. They based the growth of Lebanon, or the economic sustainability, on real estate and on some tourism that brought some fresh money. But as everybody knows, any economical or geopolitical shake destroy the tourism in any country. This is what happened in 2006, then in 2011 during the war of Syria. In 2011, the big problem happened. 2011, the war in Syria took place, and Lebanon economy was hugely exposed to Syria, Iraq, and Erbil. For the first time, the balance of payment lost overnight. That means between September and January 2011, $3 billion. At the same time, we had 1.5 million Syrians that came to Lebanon as refugees. And these people were working in Lebanon, earning money. And this money they used to spend $100 in Lebanon and send $300 to their country. So during this year and since, there is between $2 to $3 billion leaving the country of fresh money. So in 2011, when you couple the balance of payment that dropped by 3 billion, in fact, it was a balance of service that dropped 3 billion, and the exit of $3 billion from the Syrian refugee money, the balance, the Lebanese economy couldn't sustain it. And it started crawling down, and the balance of payment start turning negative and negative until 2016, where the central bank reserve were bleeding to cover the shortage of the balance of payment and of the fiscal deficit of the state, because the state was spending more than the revenue that it's generating for the last 10 to 15 years at least. So when you accumulate that, the economy, we had something called a twin deficit. a deficit in the balance of payment and a deficit in the budget of the government. And everybody knows when you have a twin deficit, it's systemic. There is an economic crisis that takes place. And this is what happened. In 2016, the central bank couldn't sustain the bleeding of its foreign currency to cover all the losses between the balance of payment and printing money and lending the state. They did the first financial engineering. Everybody heard about the financial engineering. Okay, the first one took place in 2016, and there were a few other that took place between 2016 and 2018, early 2019. This was the biggest mistake ever done by a central bank in the world. Okay, because the financial engineer was done between the dollar and the Lebanese pound, with the artificial stabilization of the Lebanese pound over 3 or 4 years. This made a loss to the country of around $20 billion, in addition to everything. So the central bank could collect liquidity, but the country generated losses in the system. Okay, in finance, nothing is for free. You get it from somewhere, you lose it from somewhere else, unless you create growth. Which was not the case in Lebanon. So first big mistake, no one did anything in the past. Second big mistake, financial engineering. Third big mistake, when the Saura took place in Lebanon in 17 October 2019, the bank system and the bank sector closed for 15 days. Everybody heard that and remember that. When a banking sector closed for 15 days, they create something called a bank run. Everybody at the opening of the bank ran to the bank to take their money because they lost the trust in the system. I'm going a little bit fast because we have only 45 minutes, unfortunately. We can talk hours if you want, but I'm just giving you the needed just to understand the continuity of the story. So when they opened, they did the biggest mistake, a bank run. We all remember the last bank run that took place in 2019 during the big depression in the US, which almost destroyed the US economy. And the Lebanese banking sector created this bank run either by stupidity or, once again, maybe it's something that was thought and built and constructed to be like that. The fourth mistake was in February 2020, February, March 2020, where the state of Lebanon defaulted on the Eurobond. Okay, no one in the history of the world default on its sovereign debt if you don't have a previous plan with a full plan study around the Lebanese economy, the Lebanese sector, the banking sector, and all the debtor and creditor that are holding your sovereign debt. The Lebanese state took the decision unilaterally for populism reasons, for stupid reasons, for, once again, I don't know, but this is unacceptable that a state took such a decision to default on Eurobond. They defaulted they said that because they don't want to pay interest rate on the Eurobond and to keep this $1.2 billion to feed the poor. In fact, by defaulting on Eurobond, they did a $15 billion haircut on depositors because the banks used to hold $15 billion of Eurobond using the money of the depositors. Okay, so huge mistake. And since the country was downgraded, the banks were downgraded, external trust was completely lost in the system and in the country, in addition to the internal trust, so the country started deteriorating, and we reach today a deterioration in the Lebanese country of more than 100%, a hyperinflation that is catastrophic, and the destruction of the purchase power of the Lebanese citizen that is unprecedented, which is making the Lebanese people poorer and poorer and poorer. Okay. So in view of that, there is a big problem because when we look at the past 3 years, assuming that the state and the government didn't know in the early 20s that there was a problem in the economy. They definitely know since 2019 that there is a problem. And since no one has done anything to solve the problem. On the contrary, they defaulted on a new bond and they destroyed the trust and the Lebanese economy further. So we had a big problem today. The people who participated to the value destruction of the country were in fact re-elected in the parliament recently. And this is, I would not say it's a mistake, but it's a terrible error that happened today. The change did not take place as it should be. Okay, of course, some new parliament got into the parliament, but it's not enough. The majority is still there. The majority that were controlling the country, stealing the country, creating corruption, destroying the economy, destroying the institution of the states. And this is important. You know, during the time of the President Shihab in the past, they created the nation, Liban nation, the nation, not the country, as an institution of state. Okay, today there was a systemic destruction of the institution. Wherever you go today, there is no paper to print, to do ikhraj aid, to do a passport, to do a business transaction, or to sell or buy a land. Nothing is working in the institution. They don't have even electricity to run their institution. They are underpaid, okay, and they don't go to the office, unfortunately. Something should change. Lebanon cannot continue like that. Lebanon will go not to hell, but to full destruction. And I'm afraid, I'm sorry to be pessimistic tonight. I'm afraid that in the next 6 to 10 months, if nothing is done, the remaining reserves at the central bank will disappear, and the country will not be bankrupt, but will not have any additional liquidity to run. There will be a shortage of everything. And what's crazy, no one yet has set a plan to save the country. All the plans that has been set up to today, and I'm going to talk about them, were set in order to deliver a certain objective. It might solve a part of the problem, but they were set to serve a certain objective to destroy the economy of the country. And I'm responsible of what I'm saying. There were 2 plans set by the government. One in the time of Hassan Diab plan, and this was so far good plan, better than this one, okay, better than, with some amelioration that need to be improved, but it was not perfect. But should it have been implemented, it would have maybe not let the country drifting towards what we are today, okay. But the new plan, I'm sorry to say it, is a catastrophe, okay? The new plan has many items that are good, but one part which is a catastrophe that will destroy the country fully. You heard about the new plan maybe, but there is a very important clause in it that says that Lebanon has $72 billion of losses. It's a consolidated losses in the system. Okay, and this $72 billion in the system need to be resolved in order to save the country. Okay, how do they resolve this? They said that the responsibility of the situation of Lebanon rely on the state, on the central bank, on the banks, which is right. Okay, and if you ask me, it's 50% the state, 25% roughly, the central bank, and 25% the banks. So the banking sector 50% and the states 50%. But unfortunately, what they are saying in the government is that the state has no money. So the full payment of the $72 billion should be done by the banks. What does it mean? That means that the bank will pay part of it because the banks have $15 billion of assets, which are the capital of the banks. Okay, no, $15 of capital in the banks. Okay, so that means we'll wipe out the banking system. And in my experience, I've never seen a country losing its full banking sector, which is an aberration. It's crazy to say, I'm going to destroy the banking system. They made mistakes. They used our money the wrong way. Right. We have to to judge them. We have to make them accountable. There are laws in Lebanon since the intra-bank bankruptcy. There is the law 62/7 and 110 that we need to apply to make them accountable, okay, to judge them, and to maybe up to go if we prove that their role in the value destruction and the mismanagement of the deposit money, they can go to prison and their own asset can be seized. So there are definitely things that we can do, but we cannot destroy the banking sector. The banking sector needs to be conserved. It can be merged. It can be restructured. We have 55 banks. We can go down to 10 banks, 7 banks, because our economy is 3 to 4 times smaller today. But you cannot destroy, because we need banks to recreate and reignite the economy. We need to create growth, a GDP growth, and the banking system will finance this growth, like in any free and liberal system in the world. Okay, so $72 billion of losses, $15 billion will come from the banks, assuming we destroy the banking system. This is a plan of the government, but the rest, where does it come from? The $57 billion, it will come from the deposits. So we will do a haircut of around 60% of the money of the depositors. This is an aberration if we want to create a new country, because very simple. If you want to create an economy and build growth and bring foreign direct investor and fresh money to the country, you have to create trust, okay? And by cutting depositors' money, you destroy the trust in the banking system and the Lebanese economy and in Lebanon as a country forever. You know, your grandson will tell to his grandson, never put your money in the Lebanese banks or Lebanese system. And what we need is to bring back the money to our country. So they are doing the opposite in order not to go into accountability to the states, in order not to have the state put his money, his hand in his pocket to participate. They are putting everything on the banks and the depositors. Once again, the banks need to be judged. We have laws for that, but the state has to participate as well. So the current plan is an aberration. It's just here to please the IMF, but I don't think the IMF, and I would like to do such a value destruction in a country. They are, I mean, the IMF has seen so many plans and so many countries with problem. I'm sure they would understand that such a current plan is an aberration. Okay. Once again, when I see all this between 2001. Sorry, I got muted. So when I see this, 201, 206, 211, 2016 financial engineering, 2019 bank run, bank closing, 2020 default on Eurobond. Nothing has been done since over 3 years, and a plan like that with a craziness of not building an energetic system in Lebanon, like the electricity of Lebanon, leaving it as it. For me, it's a planned financial destruction of the country. Why? Because maybe there are geopolitical reasons to put Lebanon on its knees for whatever reasons. I'm not going to talk politics today, but everybody understands what I'm saying. Either for the borders, either for oil, either for the internal, military problem and arms that are free in Lebanon. So many, reasons for that. But at the end, we as Lebanese, we are paying it from our pockets, and our Lebanon, the title is Our New Lebanon. Our new Lebanon, if we continue like that, will not exist anymore. Okay, you come here for holidays, you see Lebanese people dancing. This is 3 to 5% of the Lebanese that are running the economy today. Okay, 25 are really craving from hunger. You go to the mountains, you go to Akkar, you go to the south, you go to, it's it's terrible. And now the winter is coming. The price of the oil and mazout is skyrocketing. The subsidies are lifted up. So we have a problem. And here is the situation. So what to do? What to do? I think, Ferris, I still have 25 minutes to.
Yeah, you do. You do. You want to share some slides?
I will. I just.
You're good. You're good. You have time.
Yes, just want to explain how the money of the Lebanese depositor has disappeared. Okay, I will show you one slide. Okay, then I will go into a solution, a roadmap for recovery, because today no recovery can happen. No recovery can happen with the current political system. Okay, hamiha haramiha. You know the story. So I can propose any plan, and my friend here, Nicole, would be happy to hear me saying that. I can say any plan. I can put any beautiful plan. If there is no will in the political system to make the change, nothing will happen. In fact, the people who made the Lebanon happen, take this situation, are not willing to go to prison, because this is serious what happened. So I'm going to show you one slide before I go into the roadmap for recovery, to show you how Lebanese people lost their money. It's a simple slide. It's a little bit more complicated. I make it simple for everyone to understand it. Okay. Okay. Look at this slide. Okay. The numbers are updated as of a month ago. Okay. Let's not look at the number as number. Okay, because numbers change every day, every month. For example, if you look at this number, it's not 105 anymore, it's 102 or 100. Okay. In fact, depositors brought their money to the banking system. Okay. Why? Because the banking system used to provide high interest rate. Why the banking system used to provide high interest rate? Because the central bank has done some financial engineering, which are the biggest mistake ever in the history of Lebanon. In 2016, between 2016 and early 2019, to be able to provide high interest rate on dollar to the banks. But in fact, these were virtual interest. It was not real interest. It was scriptural numbers on your account. And as long as you don't pull your full account from the banks, you didn't feel it. You used to pull $5,000, $6,000 as your day-to-day liquidity. You were okay until the bank run, where everybody wants to pull his money. Okay, you had the problem. It was kind of a Ponzi system. I'm not saying that. It's a World Bank report. If you read it lately, it was very well described. So the depositors put their money in the banks. The banks want to deploy $105 billion. Or the Lebanese economy doesn't have, is not big enough. The GDP was not 105, okay? Today is 18 billion roughly. So they cannot deploy 105, in the economy. They deployed 20 billion in loans. And, this is figures of last month, huh? In loans, in car loans, in personal loans, real estate loans. But the rest, they bought with it Eurobonds, 9 billion, and they put 75 billion at the central bank. Okay, the central bank, financed the state, financed the stability of the Lebanese pound at 1,505.7, and financed, subsidized, the oil, the medicines, and the flour for Lebanon. It was not targeted subsidy, because 50% of the subsidy went into smuggling across the border. And of course, there were, political parties that profit from it. And it was the money of the depositors. And of course, they financed the balance of payment. So balance of payment, the untargeted subsidies, managing the FX, the foreign currency stability, which was an aberration, and financing the state. They spent the 75 billion. And these are the 75 billion that are missing in the system. Okay, the last plan of the state is talking about 72 billion, wherever. We are not at 5%, accuracy. Okay, so these are missing. So the money of the depositors is hooked at the state, and the state 9.5 billion of Eurobond The state defaulted on Eurobond. So these were lost. The 72 billion were lost. And still, we have 20 billion of loans in the system. And that's what remains. That's how we lost our money. Because the banks did a big mistake. There are two mistakes. One is called liquidity mismatch problem. So they took your money at 1 year and they deposit at 10 years with the central bank. So it was locked there. And second one was called a single borrower exposure. They cannot expose they cannot expose to any entity more than 20% of their capital. Or here they expose 8 times their capital. 8 times, 800% exposure. Big mistake. Okay, so the banks are responsible. The central bank is responsible. And the state is responsible because the state today has $105 billion of loan, borrowing, and debt at 1,500 rate. So the what we call the golden triangle is responsible of the problem. Golden triangle, which is state, central bank, and banks. At the end, it's the depositor that's paying his money. Who's responsible? Of course, corruption. State, 50%. Central bank, 25%. Banks, 25%. And very important, we forgot that, external auditors. What were they doing? They were controlling 55 banks in terms of audit every year and generating official report of good sanity. And some big depositors played the system. Also, they are responsible of what happened. But this is what happened today. That's how Lebanese people lost their money. Can we recover that? Yes. I'm optimistic that if we have the good political leadership that is willing to save the country and the good plan, we can still recover a big part of it. Maybe not full of the full amount, but big over 5 to 10 years. So how are we going to do? Okay. I'm going to propose to you, I know that Faris, maybe our Newman has sent my plan to everybody, okay? I'm going to put a plan over a few steps, okay? We still have 15 to 20 minutes, Faris, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the plan is very simple, okay? First of all, we need to set a capital control. Capital control, everybody's talking about it. For me, it's not useful anymore. Forget capital control. It's outdated. Okay, but they are insisting to put it at the parliament for whatever reason and covering themselves that the IMF needs. It's not true. The IMF doesn't need a capital control. They need a control of some transfers in order to ensure that the money that they will lend us will not fly away. Okay, so assuming we set the capital control, okay, it should be set for maximum 6 months, maximum. And they are insisting for 1 year, so we set it for once. Why do we gonna put it? Because during the 6 months to 1 year period, we're gonna do all the needed reforms in order to structure the country. The first reform is the electricity. A country with no energy will die. And once again, not having set up the electricity system in Lebanon is war against Lebanon. Energetic war is very powerful. Look what's happening in Europe today with the gas of Russia. Look what's happening in Pakistan. Look what's happening in Iraq. What's happening in Africa's countries. No electricity is worse than war. Today, Lebanese people are paying $400 to $500 the price to get 6 to 10 hours of electricity through generator every month. If you reignite the electricity in Lebanon, the price will be much lower, $150 a month for 24-hour electricity. That means every Lebanese family will save $350 of spending that will increase its purchase power. It's a lot of money today for Lebanon. Okay, then the industry will work, our production will be cheaper, we'll be exporting better, etc., etc. So this is very important. Electricity will drive internet, will drive water, will drive industry, will drive agriculture, will drive everything. So if we don't want to remember something from this presentation, electricity, electricity, electricity. Second point, the central bank need to enact immediately a transparent monetary policy that standardizes the exchange rate. Then a strategy to understand, shall we float the exchange rate or shall we lock it? Okay. A few months back, I would say floating. Today, I'm a little bit perplexed because the economy is 98, 95% dollarized. So we have to maybe think a mixture. So, but the strategy needs to be set up immediately within the next months in order to ensure one exchange rate in order to do business and ease of doing business for internal and external investors in Lebanon. You have 5 exchange rates. It's crazy. Second, the parliament need to enact immediately. Okay, maybe I'm dreaming, but I'm going to tell you the steps that need to save our country, our new Lebanon, or Lebanon 3.0, as I say. The rule of law, a law that guarantees the independence of justice. Today, the worst that is in Lebanon is not the economy. Our justice is not independent. So we need to lobby to ensure that the justice is independent. I look at Rwanda. Rwanda, they did one thing, okay? They created the rule of law. And you see Rwanda today, they were killing each other in Mashhad, 1 million deaths. Rwanda is growing 7% a year for the last 7 years, the fastest growing country in Africa. So the rule of law, enacting the bank secrecy law, which was amended but wrongly recently, and of course, the independence of justice to fight corruption and ensure that we are killing the informal economy by stopping and controlling the borders, port, airport, and land. But this is costing a lot of money to the Lebanese treasury. Okay? Lifting the bank secrecy will be very important and mandatory on both public and private servants. Today, everybody say, hey, bank secrecy is dangerous because everybody else has something to hide. The bank secrecy lift up should be mandatory on both the public and private, public servants and private institutions, that are working with the public sector. But because corruption happens always between the public and the private sector. Corruption never happens in the public alone, or very rare. It's the private sector that provoke the corruption. So any private institution or person that is dealing with the government contract should have the bank secrecy lifted. Third, audit banks, the central bank and the main public institution, okay, to ensure and evaluate the real losses in the system, because if you don't know your real loss, okay, you cannot solve the problem. Today, they are estimating it at 72. I don't know how they did it, okay, but definitely it's not accurate. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. Most probably it's bigger, okay, because it didn't do any audit, not even finalize the audit of the central bank. We don't want a forensic audit as a start. We want an audit. Accountability will come in the second stage. Now I want to understand how much the system has losses in order to solve the problem. Second, initiate a fiscal process to claw back, okay, onerous earning and restitute interest rate above the Eurobond rate. Depositor got high interest rate because of financial engineering. This is wrong. The average interest rate that should have been paid is the Eurobond interest rate, that the maximum between 6 and 7%, because it computes the risk of the country. Every interest rate above the 6, 7% should be clawed back in order to reduce the losses in the country. Third, fifth, I don't know. Set a strong and fair, transparent public procurement law. We should forbid monopoly. Still in Lebanon, you have monopoly, okay? Which is different from exclusivity. You can have exclusivity, but not monopoly. Okay. Last, in the first stage of the roadmap, that is the second stage that we'll talk about it, we have to strengthen the public audit. Diwan al-Muhasaba. Today, Diwan al-Muhasaba is not working. Some people are saying, yes, it's working, but every report is still in the cupboard and it's not taken to justice and executed. Diwan al-Muhasaba is key because it will audit the public institution fully and ensure transparency and control and stop corruption. It should be an independent body. Once again, our problem in Lebanon is that every controlling body is not independent. If I look at the central bank, the Business Control Commission, the Banking Control Commission, the Special Investigation Commission, and the Capital Monetary Authority are not independent. How do you want to control the banking system and to stop the mismatch that happened in the banking sector if these entities are not independent? They were part of the problem, okay? In every country in the world, the Capital Market Authority has a Chinese wall between the central bank and itself. In Lebanon, the CMA is headed by the governor of the central bank. It's aberration. Okay, maybe if we had some independence, we wouldn't have printed so much Eurobonds, and the problem would have been smaller. I don't know. So many things could have happened if our governance would have been better. And even in the banks, the chairman is a chief executive at the same time. He's a dictator. He can do everything. We have to separate the execution body from the governance body, like in Switzerland, like in any country that have a respectable banking sector. All this need to be taken in consideration. Okay, this is the first step of the robot. So many things to do. You're going to tell me, Nicola, you're crazy, nothing will happen. Yes, maybe I am, but I'm telling them what to do and what to do correctly in order to save our country, not in order to bleed the trust in the full system and destroy it once again. Second part of the roadmap, and we still have 10 minutes maybe. We need to set a strong and smart fiscal policy and strategy to close the budget deficit. We cannot continue with a budget deficit of $5 billion every year, excluding the lending that we are giving to Electricity of Lebanon and excluding the subsidies that are done by the central bank, which are not the job of the central bank as per the CMC, the Qanun Naql Taslif. Normally, it should be the social affair ministry and the Ministry of Economy should subsidize. So if we add the subsidy made by the central bank and the deficit of the state, okay, it's not 5 billion, it's 10 billion, in fact. So the losses in the central bank, most of them, beside the exchange rate stabilization and the coverage of the balance of payment, are coming from the state. That's why the state is a big contributor to the problem. And the devaluation of the Lebanese pound, he is the biggest contributor in the devaluation of the Lebanese pound. Why? Because when you have a deficit of 5 billion or 10 billion, at the end of the year, the central bank should close for you this deficit in order to open your account for the second year. So the central bank is printing money. And when you print money, you devaluate your money. So we need to close the fiscal deficit, okay, through a 3-year balanced budget or a 5-year balanced budget and strengthen tax collection. We should, at first sight, we should not increase tax collection. We should strengthen tax collection because also people in Lebanon are not paying tax or escaping tax in all regions, okay? So, third, restructuring the public sector and rescheduling the debt, Eurobond and Treasury bill. We have to restructure the public sector. We have 400,000 employees in Lebanon. Do you imagine? It should be 100 or 150 for a country like us. 300% more. So we have to reduce the public servant, to introduce the cost on the government. We have to technologically invest in the country for e-government in order to reduce the cost, to improve service, and to reduce the corruption. Then we have to restructure the debt. We have defaulted in our debt without restructuring it. We have to sit on a table to restructure the internal debt, which is the treasury bills in Lebanese pound, and the external debt in dollars. We owe $15 billion to our external creditors in fresh money. Now the value of the debt is small because the value of the Eurobond is 0.5 cents on the dollar, 0.6 cents on the dollar. So what I would advise, if we have some dollars, let's strike a deal and buy the Eurobond one shot instead of letting this flow and having our creditors putting our hands on potentially, and it's difficult, but potentially on our assets or state assets. Third, set a full strategy to squeeze the balance of payment. We cannot continue with a balance of payment which is negative. A negative balance of payment is a net outflow of money outside the country. They will tell you, yes, the Lebanese diaspora came this summer and they spent $5 billion. Fine, they spent $5 billion, which is great. But when you look at the balance of payment, it's still net $5 billion negative, which means even if they spend the $5 billion in the summer, we're still negative. Imagine if they didn't come and spend the $5 billion. So we have to do a full strategy to review the small and medium enterprises in order to restructure their business, transform them to export, to the export, review the salaries, review the raw material. How can we produce raw material in Lebanon and not export everything, produce product and resell? We have also to review the cost of production by electricity. We have to, that's why we need the electricity of Lebanon to be cheaper. Today is 2.5 times more expensive, which is, we have one of the most expensive electricity in the world. So all this need to have a strategy to control the balance of payment, to look at the service balance, to look at the trade balance. It's not difficult. This one is not difficult. It are actions that have to be taken, and fiscal action and political action and laws in order to drive it to the right direction. It cannot be solved overnight, but over 2 to 5 years, yes, there is a possibility to turn it positive. And when it turns positive, it generates net inflow of fresh money in the country. It will help participating in covering everything, depositor money and everything, and rebuild the FX exchange of the central bank and all the stuff. But you need a will that thinks positively, not on an Excel sheet and say, I'm gonna cut everybody. Fourth, enact a law to protect private deposits. Today, we have a law that protects gold. Okay, as you know, that's why nobody touched yet our gold. Okay, we have 17 billion of gold. Gold should never be touched to pay a loss, to pay for loss or cover a debt. Gold could be used partially to create growth, because gold creates the trust in the country. And this is what we need to build, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. So we need to enact a law. The way we have the law for the gold, we need to enact a law to protect depositors. It's not everyone that comes with an idea and create a plan to solve the problem on account of the depositors. No, we protect the depositors, then we build a plan to save the country. How we collect back the money of the depositors is another plan, but we don't cut the depositor money from now. Now we come to the difficult part. We have to restructure the banks. So after restructuring the states, after restructuring the debt, we have to restructure the banking sector. And every person Lina, we have to put on mute. So there is something called bank resolution law that every country that has a problem in the banking sector will apply, like in Greece, in Argentina, in Cyprus. We have a problem. Lebanese has 5 crises: has a crisis of bank, has a crisis of debt, has a crisis of central bank, because we are one of the only country in the world that has a deficitary central bank in foreign currency, because in local currency we have a printing machine of Lebanese lira, but in dollar we don't have, so we have a deficitary country central bank. We have a dollar problem, and we have, of course, a devaluation problem of the Lebanese lira. So we have a terrible, maybe we are the only country in the world that has a cumulative 5 crisis problem. So we have to resolve the banks and create what we call a bank resolution law. This law is a complicated one. Okay, it could take a few months to set it up. But I'm going to tell you the few points that need to include. First, we have to do what we call a QAR, a quality asset review. We take bank by bank and we evaluate the net asset value. That means we reevaluate the assets, because sometimes some banks has put in their balance sheet some assets that are not evaluated to the current value to avoid paying taxes. As I told you, a lot of tax evasions in Lebanon. Okay, so we re-evaluate the asset of the banks, we calculate the net asset value, and we see if the bank is sustainable or not. We have 55 banks. We bring 20 auditors, each one take 2 banks, and it takes 2 weeks to 1 month in parallel to do this analysis. Then we see what are the banks that can survive or partially survive, and what are the banks that need to be, that have problems. The banks that have problems need to be controlled and owned by the central bank. We don't want any bank to go bankrupt, because going bankrupt, we lose the money of the depositors. Lebanese law guarantee only 75 million lira. That means $2,000. If you have 1 million, they give you $2,000. So we evaluate the banks and we start restructuring the banks, merging, restructuring, moving deposit from one bank to a bank and closing the banks. There is a big process, but the most important part is to go what we call good bank, bad bank. Maybe you heard about this process. It's not something that I have invented. It's known, but nobody is talking about it, unfortunately. If you say yes, let's be fair. Some people in Lebanon talked about it a few months, 1 year back, but nobody followed upon it. Good bank, bad bank is the solution for Lebanon. Why? Because the banks has a big liability with the depositors. Okay, they have $105 billion of deposit, but they cannot give the deposit back because it's locked in the central bank, as I showed you in the previous chart. Okay, so there is $72 billion that they don't have, but they owe to the depositors. So in order to reignite the economy, we have to separate the problem. So we create two systems, one called good banks, where we put in it the good assets, that means the remaining deposit, $20–30 billion of the 105, and the remaining non-available deposit with the associated assets, as we are talking balance sheet, will be consolidated from all the banks in one entity called bad bank. This is not a bank, because it should not follow the Basel regulations, etc., because it will be very complicated to restructure it. And it will be owned 100% by the central bank. I'm going to show you a picture. Okay, just give me 1 second to share it with you. Okay, this one. Okay, so we're going to split the banks into two parts. Okay, before we had banks that owns 102 billion. Sorry, this is the updated number. Okay, it's different, 105, 102. Okay, the banks has 30 billion in the Lebanese economy, 72 billion is the central bank, and the central bank is owned by the state so far because the state capitalizes the central bank as per the Code of Money of Credit of Lebanon. Okay, before we had that. After, we're going to separate if we had a feat with cancer, we're going to put the cancer aside and start working with the good bank to restart the economy and recapitalize the good bank in order to, but before that, there is a quality asset review and an accountability process. They cannot escape like that. Okay, we have laws in Lebanon that makes them accountable on their personal assets. Okay, and I talked about that before. Okay, so the good bank will have 30 billion, okay, which is good because our economy today is between 16 and 20 billion. Okay, so it's good. And the bad bank will contain the non-available deposit with the non-available asset associated that will be owned by the central bank. Like this, I created a new economy with the good bank. Our GDP is smaller, our banking system is smaller, and I need to recapitalize it to make it stronger. It will be smaller, but stronger. And most importantly, I need to improve the government of the banks and the risk department and the audit department in order to avoid the same mistake in the future. Okay. Now that we have a good banks, we can start working on the balance of payment. The good banks will start financing the small and medium enterprises, the working capital requirement. The small and medium enterprises will start recruiting people. These people will have salaries. They start spending, and the economy will start working slowly and surely again. Okay, but the money of the depositors need to be recollected back. How? Okay, the bad bank is a secret. The bad bank will be owned by the central bank. So we have 72 billion losses in the central bank that are equivalent to the depositor loss in the bad bank and the bank capital as well. Okay, So what's need to be done is to recapitalize the central bank. And that's what the new plan of the government that you heard about it maybe early August in a presentation is not doing. The new plan doesn't want the state to capitalize the central bank. They want to throw the losses on the banks and the depositors. No. Okay? So how to capitalize the central bank? The state doesn't have money, but the state have assets. We are not going to sell state assets. Let's be very clear. Everybody are afraid. أصول الدولة ملك الشعب اللبناني. Sorry, I'm saying in English again. State assets are owned by the Lebanese citizens and people. Yes, we're not going to sell them, but we are going, we're gonna improve them. I'm gonna give you an example. The telecom in Lebanon used to produce 800 million of fresh dollars to the Lebanese government. And believe me, it was not perfectly managed. It could have brought $1.2 billion every year, okay? Just the telecom. Imagine we restructure the electricity, the telecom, the water, the airport, all this, we structure them over a period of 3 to 5 years with a huge, with a team of fund management. We put this everything in a fund called state fund. We restructure those, okay? And we call, for example, a team from BlackRock and a local team. The most important part is to have the team independent, non-political driven, non-religiously driven in order to do the right thing. Otherwise, we're gonna enter into the same problem. For this, I think my friend Karim Daher is here on the call. There is a law called 560, which is a fiduciary law, 520, sorry, fiduciary law that we can improve in order to create an independent body that can govern this fund. And you know, a fund well managed can generate between 5 to 7% return, okay? Over 10 years, I can guarantee to you that we can cover between 50 and 70% of the depositors if it's well managed. And of course, the state needs to generate more return. So the fund can generate revenue for the state and the central bank to be capitalized. We capitalize the central bank fund the bad bank. I'm going to show you in the next slide. The bad bank, and the bad bank will fund back the depositors through direct money or through bonds or shares or whatever you call it. Many systems are available. So we have a sovereign fund here between Ogero, EDL, Lands, Port, Telecom, etc. And we have trading platform independent board. Sorry, mistake, board. Okay. Independent board that will fund the central bank and recapitalize it. The central bank being recapitalized and the loss of 70 billion wiped out slowly over time. It will, as it owned 100% of the bad bank, it will recover slowly over time the money, the deposit of the money. It's the only way today, okay, to ensure that part or big part of the money of the depositor will be brought back to the depositor and they can give it back to their sons and grandsons and not lose it from day one as per the current state. We can also create another state fund using the old field, some real estate, or creating concessions. You know, we have so many big lands in Lebanon. When we look at Dubai, they created the Palm, you know, the Palm where they put villas. We can create a Palm in Lebanon. We can create a Euro Disney in Jabal Amel. We can create so many concessions. The state is rich. The state is not bankrupt. The state is in a default state because default in the Eurobond, but it's not bankrupt, okay? And we can generate revenue over time. This is the only way to start with. Then we can create a capital market or like a bourse to generate more revenue. We can create improved taxes. We can reduce the deficit of balance of payment, which will give us a net positive inflow of money and liquidity, and so on, and so on, and so on. Once you set it right on the rail, and you put the right people, not corrupted people, with the right political people to deliver and execute the plan, you can save our country and create our new Lebanon in 3 to 5 years maximum. Recreating the deposit, it might take longer, but re-putting Lebanon on shape, it is feasible. I believe in it. Okay. Last but not least, we don't need $72 billion as the state and the government is saying. We don't need it. All what Lebanon needs is liquidity. The $72 billion of depositors, okay, of depositor money that are lost in the system, we'll put it aside and we create a process to generate them Sultan. But in order to ignite the economy, you need only $15 billion. This is the liquidity needed. Let's not mix between loss and liquidity. Liquidity is cash flow, okay? The country needs $15 billion of liquidity only, okay? So this $15 liquidity only are available today. If we sign with the IMF, we're gonna get 1 to 2 million a year over 3-4 years. They promise 3 to 4 billion, okay? The central bank still have 9 billion. We can get 5 from there, okay? And the banks, sorry to say that, they have 3 to 4 billion because of the circular 154, if I'm right, that obliges the banks to recapitalize 3% of the depositors of their deposit with fresh money. So the liquidity of 15 billion is available. We can start with it. Lebanon doesn't need 72 billion. Oh, it's a huge number. No, 72 billion is a loss. Let's not mix loss and cash flow. Okay, we are bankers, we are financial people, we know how it works. Okay, so we need 15 billion of liquidity. And for this, we need to create the trust. I will end on this statement. And in order to create the trust, internal and external, the internal, and I need 1 more minute, Faris. The internal trust is created by the government doing the right thing to its people. Electricity first, restructuring of the public institutions, restructuring of the debt, and restructuring of the banking sector, showing the depositors that his money is not lost. So that's why how you create the people trust in its government. This is internal trust, external trust. You sign with the IMF, not at any cost. The current plan is at any cost. It's a high cost, extremely high cost, unacceptable cost. You sign with the IMF with a new plan, you propose to them a vision and a plan and a roadmap, and you create the external trust. Foreign direct investor, external country will be willing to come and invest because the IMF has invested and lended the country, and they believe that the country will give back the money to the IMF. So there is a trust problem, internal and external. No economy, no financial system, no country can work without trust. Today, we lost this trust fully. We have to build it back. It will take some time, but it is feasible. And I believe in the Lebanese people, in the Lebanese youngs, in the Lebanese students, in the Lebanese diaspora, in some great minds in Lebanon that are working in big companies across the world to make it happen again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anis, go ahead, ask your question. And if you can stop sharing, please, Nicholas.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mr. Sheikhani, and thank you for this precious presentation. You mentioned the trust, and I wonder, trust in who? I hope not the politicians. Most of the tools you mentioned to protect and improve the economy existed for the last 60 years, but they were mishandled, of course. Most of the politicians that we have been in power for at least 30 years. And while we have had the Paris 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, and Doha and Sadr. And today, the IMF is willing and systematically required a set of reforms. The same authorities that are ruling Lebanon, we call mafia/militia, that got us in this situation in the first place. Ironically, they're the ones who must implement those reforms. According to your roadmap that you have put forward, is it possible for this current authority to accept these reforms and conditions that is obviously suicidal to them? And suicide here means a political suicide. Unfortunately, in the last elections, also you mentioned that the hostage people voted again for the executioner. The chicken voted to those who plucked their feathers in the first place. It's like a Stockholm syndrome. According to your roadmap, will the table turn around on those who looted this country, or will history repeat itself, leading us to receiving more and more money? It's like filling basket water.
Anis, I don't know at what time you joined the call, okay, but at the beginning when I started, I was very clear that this plan is the ideal plan. And if we want, we don't want the problem to repeat every 10 years in Lebanon. This is a proper plan, okay? But I clearly also stated that with the current political bodies, this is extremely difficult to implement. I insisted this for the first 2 minutes of the presentation. Not only difficult to implement, they will never accept it and they will fight it back because they will go to prison and more. What happened in Lebanon is a high treason. Yes, you are right. This plan is a right plan, and I will push it to the end, even if I know that it's difficult to implement, because if we don't push the right plan, they will go with the wrong plan. And if you are not بالساحة to fight, the fighter will take your place. Even if sometimes you can lose or you might lose, at least you exist. Unfortunately, as I said at the beginning, our Lebanese people re-elected the same people at 90%.
Anis, do you still have any questions or he answered?
No, I just wish him good luck with the plan. And
no, I need your help, Anis.
We all support, of course. We all
need everyone help to participate. Alone, we can't do anything. Yani, Anna, today, sometimes when I communicate to people, I go on TV, lots of you know me, I go every week, 1 or twice, just to lobby back, pull back, and tell them that there is a gatekeeper. Now some people tell me, Nicola, you are resilient. You know, when I hear this, I feel that they have stopped fighting. And this is a problem. I would have preferred to say, we are with you, tell us how we can help, not you are resilient, okay? Unfortunately, the mindsets start turning like that in Lebanon. Everyone start thinking about himself, organizing. It's becoming a fully cash economy, 95%, 98% cash economy. The country is organizing in fresh dollar, smaller in fresh dollar, but fresh dollar. And everyone is thinking about himself. And everybody is accepting that there is no government, there is no finished public institutions anymore. It's crazy, crazy. Okay, we need you in the diaspora to come and bring this real fresh mindset, real hope, and tell them, no, don't lose hope, don't adapt to the shit, sorry to say that. You have great country, you have great nature, you have great people, you can build it back.
Thank you. Antoine Nassa, then Nicole Baker, then Marina Mitre. Antoine, unmute yourself.
Bonsoir et merci, Monsieur Nicolas, pour ces explications. Okay. Maybe I'm repeating myself since 3 or 4 weeks when we received the Deputy Prime Minister. I have asked him something important and told him why IMF visiting Lebanon during years and delegations coming and going to Central Bank was never criticizing the situation till the end. Now maybe they are beginning to criticize. You didn't evoke something very important about the public salaries, which were multiplied by 3 or 4 or 5 in 2017 by the government authority. And the studies were mentioning, I will tell it in Arabic, it's سلسلة الراتب والرواتب. سلسلة الراتب والرواتب, exactly in Arabic. In 2017, the situation were going down. Engineer in banking, etc., and they impose the government authority, not the central bank. They impose to the central bank to pay around 2 billion or 1,800,000. This is what was programmed at that time, and it cost around 2.5 billion, because calculation from the financial ministry were very bad. So this, you didn't mention it. You have to mention it because
I'm gonna give some details. You are right. I did not mention this.
No, it's very important. And please mention next time. And mention next time that the Eurobond, this is the government who don't authorize the BDL to pay it. They didn't want it to pay this amount. The governments, not the BDL.
No, I didn't say the BDL.
This is what only I want to say.
I'm going to precise on that point.
I want only to thank you for your plan. Your plan is perfect, but if I hear Anis, I will be with him also because we need a real change, and the population was incapable to do this real change during the elections. Unfortunately,
I'm gonna clarify this point that rightly was raised by Antoine. Definitely, in 2017, I didn't talk about it because some people doesn't understand what is it, but indeed, the state has raised the public salaries. First, they said $1 billion, but in fact, that was a big mistake in the calculation. Once again, Antoine, I think is on purpose. The mistake was on purpose. Okay, it was 2.5 billion instead of 1 billion, which also hit the treasury of the state and obliged the central bank to finance the state again. To be fair, the central bank shouldn't have financed it. Why did they? We cannot say it obliged. The central bank, if you read the CMC, Code Money of Credit, okay, the central bank it's a hybrid entity. يعني هجيني, entity هجيني, hybrid. شو يعني? What does it mean? That means it has an independent financial body, independent, but structurally it depends from the state. But any financial decision, they are independent on it. On the second point, concerning the Eurobond, you are 100% right. It's not the central bank. The central bank pushed not for defaulting on it. The central bank didn't want to default on the Eurobonds. Imagine central bank used to hold $5.2 billion of Eurobond. If the state default on it, they will have a loss of $5.2 billion. But the state and the government at that time, okay, of Hassan Diab, did the biggest mistake in the history of Lebanon and defaulted on the sovereign debt, which made the country defaulted country with Moody's and all this, scoring entities that evaluate the sanity of any state and financial institution. We went defaulted into a defaulting country state just March 2020, which is the worst that could happen to Lebanon, and the central bank was against it, and I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Only I add something, please. Small words. That when for the 1,200 million was not paid, 35 billion were now we were obliged to pay it because we make default for only one time, and this is a big mistake.
100%.
That night, the dollar jumped from 2,000 around 2,000 to 4,000 and then to 30,000, etc. This is the problem. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
The Eurobond default was the biggest mistake ever.
Okay.
I was clear, made by the state of Lebanon.
Yeah.
And why? Let's ask the question to the people that was there. There is an accountability there.
Nicole Baker, Marina Mitri, and the last question will be for Hussein Baker.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Ballouz Baker. I'm an economist. I agree on the majority and the big majority of the points that were raised by Mr. Shikhani, my colleague, my friend. We discussed a lot together. And I want to point out at one thing. We talk always about the consequences of this crisis we are in, and we try to find remedies to the consequences. We don't point out the real cause, and we have to have the courage to say what is the real cause of our crisis, which is we are an occupied country with violated borders by Hezbollah, And without borders, we cannot do any standardized exchange rate, any capital control, because we can't control where the money is going out to or coming in from, any budget, anything at all, any economic reform will not hold. So my question, and it is a very pertinent question, is who are the holders of the Eurobonds and why haven't they sued the government yet?
Okay, this is a good question. I will go even further. I will talk about CDSs. You know what's a CDS? Okay, at the beginning of the crisis, okay, we used to have $31 billion of Eurobond. With interest, it's around 34 today, 35, roughly. Okay, it was owned 50% by the banks. The banks of the, let's say 30 million. Let's take the number of 30. 50% was owned by the bank. Okay, 30 million. Okay, that means 15 billion. 5.2 billion was owned by the central bank. So definitely the central bank didn't want this to happen. And around 10 million, 9 point something, 10 million was owned by external debtors, which are Ashmore and Fidelity and some other funds. We call this, some of them are vulture funds. Vulture funds are like vulture. They come and eat the dead body. Okay, that's why they own this Eurobond, to come and put their hand on this. I did a big study of 30 pages on the Eurobond, and if the external debtor can put their hands on any state assets to recover. Okay, we have to know that the state has assets in Lebanon. Okay, and this is forbidden by the law, Lebanese law, to have anybody put their hand on the Lebanese assets. They can try, but they cannot execute it, because we have a law in Lebanon that protects sovereign assets. They still have assets outside Lebanon, okay, in the embassies and in the account of the embassies and in the land of the embassies and any asset owned by the state. Okay? If the creditor wants to put his hand on an asset outside Lebanon, he will be in breach of the Austrian Accord, okay, l'accord autrichien, that guarantees, okay, internationally the sovereignty of any state on his own asset outside his country. So what remains? Maybe some lands, okay, that are not where you don't have an embassy, because embassy is a political state, part of the Lebanese state. Maybe some lands or some monetary investment outside Lebanon. Okay, this can be held by the external debtors. Okay, and maybe some boats that are traveling on the sea that are contracted by the Lebanese government, like oil boats to bring oil to the central, electricity, you know, all these things, they can be seized, but they don't represent a big amount compared to the losses they have incurred. Now we have gold, okay? And the big problem is to understand if the gold is a property of the state or not. If the gold is a property of the state, it can be seized, because some of the gold is not in Lebanon. Okay, we know that some of the gold I don't like to talk about it publicly, but it's known, it's not in Lebanon. So some of the gold can be seized. The advantage of the structure set in the central bank is that the gold is on the balance sheet of the state, of the central bank, sorry. Although the gold was bought by the state money in the early 60s and 70s, it's not on the balance sheet of the state. It's a balance sheet of the central bank. C'est clair? So it's very difficult for a debtor to come and seize this gold. There are ways. I'm not going to talk about them publicly, because I will never give bullets to
the vultures.
Our vultures. There are some ways, okay, that they can encounter the law or prove something that they can put at risk our goal. But for the moment, it's a stalemate approach, okay? And I would advise the state to close this chapter immediately, to sit on a table and propose a one bid term offer and to buy the Eurobond at 5 billion. Close it. Why it could work? Because the creditor has already accounted in their balance sheet a default, and they took the provisions and they moved away. The more they can collect, the better for them, to be more revenue, but they already accounted for the loss because it has been 2.5 years, so they have to account for it on the accounting standards.
Thank you very much. Marina Mitri, then Hussein Baker, and last question will be for Hussein. Marina, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Marina.
Thank you very much. This is the first time I was able to understand the whole thing, and it was very clear. Your explanation was amazing, and it gives hope to build really our new Lebanon. Now, my question is, in your opinion, we're coming now to a presidential election. Do you believe the right president, to choose the right president, can proceed with a good economy plan to save Lebanon? And if so, how do you think the diaspora can lobby to a perfect president to lead the country? Do you think a good or the right president can be the savior of Lebanon? Thank you.
Okay, this is a good question. It's a political question we ask in an economical presentation, but I will answer it with great pleasure. In fact, today, we need a president that is neutral, sovereign, very important, and independent. Okay, and on this base, we didn't have this in the past. Okay, neutrality is very important to create growth and to create value in an economy. We look at all the countries that are neutral. الحياد الإيجابي, c'est pas la peine que ce soit une neutralité directe, بس الحياد الإيجابية, and they worked on it. Okay, every country that has this neutrality process in the constitution has great economic growth because there is no war. When there is no war, every value creation, every money that is created through the country and the institution of the country is injected in the country. There is no value destruction. You don't have infrastructure that is destroyed and you have to rebuild it and to ignite it. And every time the economy does this, the economy will continue growing. Every money is injected in the economy. So neutrality is then, sovereignty is key. The state need to be sovereign on all this is territory in terms of war and peace is very important. You cannot go into stand-alone decisions and involve Lebanon in such unfunded, okay, and unstructured wars that kills the country again. Okay, and you need to have him independent that they think about the Lebanese first, not his interest. Okay, لازم يكون مش للكرسي، الكرسي تكون له. Okay, يعني if one day he need to resign, he has to resign, and not this on the chair and I will never leave it. Okay, this is my chair. Unfortunately, power and money are always like that in people, the DNA of people. Is there some people like that in Lebanon? Might be, yes. I think that we can find a couple that could fulfill this role. We need also a independent and strong and honest, okay, prime minister, okay, that will work in tandem with the president, especially after the Ta'if Accord. As you know, in the constitution, you have independency between the two bodies. So if they don't work in tandem, that will be a difficult problem. And definitely, there are some great prime ministers that I personally know. They are maybe on this call as well. So it's good to have the right people. If we don't have the right people, Unfortunately, once again, as I said when I started this call, I will be very pessimistic for the future of our new Lebanon.
Thank you. Hussam, tfaddal, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. يعطيك العافية, Nicolas. And I have a couple of things I want to discuss. First of all, regarding the banking restructuring. And you spoke about bad banks and good banks. Currently, the issue with the banking sector is that the local banks will never allow any foreign banks to enter and buy shares from them because of the current valuation, because all the banks have zero value now or even negative value. So this is never going to happen. And the second thing, the foreign banks will never enter as long as you don't have any legal system, any security, nothing in the country. This is a conflict. And I don't know how these things will be solved. Plus also about the recovery plan that you mentioned, the roadmap. Also, like, we have to admit, like, this is highly theoretical because also, as you said, as long as we have these people in power here, nothing's gonna happen. But also, like, I have a small comment between brackets, يعطيك العافية, for this, but like, it will take much more time and effort to do a proper roadmap. And you need a big team to go, and what we discussed were mainly like objectives from here or some tactical points from here or ideas from there. But also the basics is to have a proper audit, operational audit and financial audit, and to have like a team to tackle all these things from the corporate government level and then moving into all the other countries. And this is like a good start, but it needs much more work to be more structured. So these are the 2 points that I wanted to share with you.
Thank you. Unmute yourself, Nicholas. Unmute yourself.
You're perfectly right, Hussam. Without a proper audit body and a structured plan and with audit in the private sector and the public sector. It's not only in the private banking sector. The public sector audit is very important. And concerning the external banks that could come into Lebanon, you know that the plan of the government are proposing something called bail-in. There are 2 things, bail-in and bail-out. Bail-in is that the depositor that has their money in the banks will come and take share in the banks because the bank cannot give them back their money. Bail-out is an external investor that invests in the bank and takes shares in the bank. What needs to be done, if they want to do a bail-in, they need to restructure the debt first. Why? Because if they structure the debt after the bail-in, okay, some big depositor will take shares in the banks for free because the bank was zero. Okay, most of the banks are underwater.
Exactly.
So 40-50% of the banks, but the banks own Eurobonds. So they will buy the Eurobonds through buying the bank at zero price almost. If they do the restructuring of the Eurobond after the bank restructuring, the Eurobond price will increase and they will earn Eurobond at zero price with much bigger value later on. So the process that need to be followed need to have a specific priority. First, you restructure the debt and create value in the Eurobond. Then you restructure the banks and you do the bail-in. You cannot do one before the other. Otherwise, we will steal again the state one more time for free. Okay, Hussam?
Yeah, and restructuring the debt also is a huge thing because then you will need a proper recovery plan in place, which is not going to happen also as long as these people are here. Plus also I have, I don't know, it's like a personal maybe theory that some of the Eurobonds that were held by the banks were sold to the bank shareholders at a loss so that they will get them later on also at a higher price with the vulture funds. I think also there was like a kind of game also in this regard.
You know what's a CDS? You know what's a CDS?
Yeah.
It's an insurance on a bond. En résumé, in summary. Some people, there are some rumors in the market that saying some people have bet on the Eurobond default and bought some CDS, okay, and executed it's an insurance, like a life insurance. When you die, you earn money. when the Eurobond default, you earn money. Okay, so some people lobbied for the Eurobond default. We don't know who, but the government of the central bank governor on TV said that he is investigating this. So if this
happens, I know there is something in this regard. I don't want to put a lot of assumptions.
Criminal financial act.
Yes, of course.
Criminal financial act. Okay, that need to be investigated.
Okay. But also, Nicolas, like you are in a catch-22 today. Okay, you cannot restructure the banks before you put a plan to recover the debts, and you cannot recover the debts before you put the banking sector goes. But I don't know, and it's a catch-22. We're stuck. Nothing's going to happen. And honestly, I don't think the issue will start from there. You will need a complete restructuring of the entire government. Government sectors need to be distributed into the assets, what we have, the operational, organizational, and the income generating, like the taxes, etc. Anyway, it's a big plan, but unfortunately, it's not the right time to discuss it.
If you have the right president, the right prime minister, and a few ministers for a small period of time with full authority, okay, on specific things to deliver the safety of Lebanon, it will happen.
Okay, Ali, please send me your question, and I'll send it to Nicholas to answer it, because the time we're done. Nicholas, you want to do your closing statement? And thank you very much.
أنا لا فارس بعد في سؤال واحد الأخير، خلينا نسمع علي حرام.
طيب يلا تفضل علي. Unmute yourself though.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the seminar that you provided us with. Actually, you are like a positive, one of the positive persons in Lebanon that we look up to. There's a lot of negativity going on at this time. And I commend you for the different positive outlooks that you present to all of us, and especially the public. We are living actually in a catastrophic situations, and there's a huge mistrust in the banking system and even the government institutions. The depositors, some of them are really seeking to get some of their assets to get by, and it's not happening. My question is, or two questions actually. There's money that have been escaped by the affiliated people of politicians and the bankers, and I believe, and many people believe, this money is a stolen money, because what remained in the pot, some elected to associate that money to themselves and deprive others from it, and they transferred it abroad. This money is considered stolen money now because they took it from everybody's bank accounts, and it could be fallen under the category of money laundering. So there has been a lot of circulars by the central bank, like Circular 154, which demands that all the PEPs and the affiliated people with the banking industry, and even the importers, to return some of their money going to 2017, which is almost like 2 years before the bubble exploded. So those money should be returned, and they could basically form a big reserve and a jump starting the economy. and
علي الله يخليك عجل شوي لأنه we are out of time.
Ali,
okay.
go to the point. Go to the point.
The other thing, basically the money laundering. The other thing is the currency. It's being mutated. The dollar currency is being mutated. Isn't that illegal for Lebanon to have grades of the US dollar, because it could be violating the monetary fund of the United States? You know, nobody could claim to have created certain grades of dollars. Thank you. That's
okay. For the first question, lots of people are still thinking about the stolen money in Lebanon that left Lebanon before 17th of October and after 17th of October. We have to know that Lebanon is a liberal economy where private sector and free economy is guaranteed by the constitution. So you have the right, I repeat, you have the right to transfer money anytime you want from outside to inside Lebanon, as long as you fulfill the KYC, AML, know your customer, anti-money laundering procedures. Okay, so no one can forbid you from doing that. Now, if we can, if we can prove that the transfer of money is due to an délit d'initié who is linked to a money laundering process, if you can prove it, you can ignite a legal process to restitute it back. Unfortunately, okay, if you look at what happened in other countries over the last 50 years, 50, okay, most of the time the legal process will take 5 years to 10 years, and you will not be able to collect more than 15 to 20%. It will barely reimburse the lawyer, okay? What needs to be done, if the legal process is in place, and if it's proven, there are two ifs, that the money is stolen or whatever you call it, onerously earned, whatever, you need to do a settlement like they did in Brazil, lavajato settlement. That means you say, guy, we know that you have stolen $100 million, for example. There is a legal procedure against you. If you put 50 or 60 in a fund to reignite the economy, we forget the rest, but you don't have the right anymore to go into politics for 20 years, for example. Okay, or another process of settlement between HSBC and France. You remember the scandal of HSBC and France a few years back? Okay, they called all the depositors and told them, we know penny by penny, what did you do? Okay, please reimburse, and we will not launch a legal procedure against you. This is a way that is more efficient because it's faster and it allows you to bring more money to the fund. Okay, another problem is after 17th of October. After 17th of October, when the bank decided to do a unofficial capital control, the banks nevertheless, okay, transferred discriminatory-wise $7 to $9 billion of money, of fresh money. This has killed the economy. This I didn't mention it, and I forgot to mention it. Sorry. This one of the things that put the economy on its knees, because it's not a wrong decision. It's a decision that was taken by the banks to transfer money discriminatory. Okay, not my money, but the money of politicians or a chairman of a bank, or I'm not going to cite, outside Lebanon, استنسابيا, comme on dit en arabe, okay, de manière discriminatoire, and this is wrong. They have the right to transfer the money because there is no official capital control. But in that case, they have to transfer the money of everyone who asks money to be transferred. Okay. And now what's happening, and I will close with this Faris دقيقة. Okay. They want to vote the capital control law. You heard about it. It's too late already. It's irrelevant to do a capital control today. But there is a clause in the capital control, clause 12, that free the banks from any legal action that could take them to court, because they will say that the banks will not have the right to transfer money anymore starting 17th of October. So if there is a court action that oblige the bank to restitute the money to any depositor, the bank will say, oh, there is a law, I cannot do it. The problem that if they vote this law, they will have to vote with it in parallel, linked, a law that will restitute the money that went out after 17th of October. They cannot say, by Dr. Ishira, they cannot say the bank is protected by law and the bank will not restitute the money that they shouldn't have transferred because there is a law that forbids them. So there is a big dilemma here. And I have written an article in Nida al-Watan that will go out tomorrow, first page, that shows, that explains the problem. The parliament will vote on such a law on Tuesday. So we have to lobby to ensure that such a law will not be discriminatory to the depositors. And it is. So the banks are saying, yes, if I have a guy in London that make a legal action on me, I'll have to pay him. But the Lebanese guy who cannot make a legal action on me, I cannot pay him. So it will be discriminatory between the depositors. They are hiding behind this, while the problem is bigger. You should not be on the dance floor to look at it. You have to be on the balcony to see the problem. Okay? And the problem is that they did transfer up to $9 billion. And it was said in a conference, $6 or $7 billion by the director of finance in a conference. He said it, he was the first one to say about it, okay? That the banks has transferred such an amount of money, and since they transferred a little bit more, discriminatory. So if they want to be protected against illegal action, they have to restitute this money, because in that case, they don't have the right to transfer it. And this will be almost an impossible point, because the money already vanished in the global financial system. They went into real estate, blah, 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 blah. So today, if the parliament on Tuesday vote for such a law and keep clause 12 protecting the banks, it's a big, big, big defeat to the depositors and a big win for the banking lobby.
Okay.
We don't need a capital control anymore. It's not needed.
Did you include it in your plan?
Yes, it's in my plan. You can read it.
The 9 billion?
6 or 7, I don't remember.
That they transfer abroad, right?
Let's not talk about, let's not talk about numbers, because numbers change every day. You have to know it's a bulk number. It's a big number.
Okay, guys, it's time to go. Nicholas,
I would like to thank everybody. Ferris, I would like to thank you, because Ferris was exceptional, in organizing this. I used to be on contact with him on a regular basis, especially this afternoon. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for this great audience. I see people across the globe. Bravo, our new Lebanon, and hope to see you soon for the V2 version.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.